Move! You don't belong up here.
You're sitting in my seat.
People like you fly economy. Sir, please step back.
Please read my ticket.
He is wasting time.
I own this airline.
No!
No.
You're lying! Please tell me this isn't real.
Get out of that seat. The words cut through first class before the cabin door had even closed. Caleb Monroe looked up from his phone. For one quiet second, he did not move. His coffee sat untouched on the wide leather armrest. His boarding pass rested beside it, folded cleanly, the bold print showing seat 1A. But Linda Carver was already standing over him. She was 46, polished from head to toe, with pearl earrings, a cream designer jacket, and the tight smile of a woman who had spent most of her life being obeyed. Her manicured fingers clamped onto the edge of Caleb's shoulder. "This is my seat," she said. Her voice was low, but sharp enough for the passengers nearby to hear. Caleb blinked once. He was 51, broad-shouldered, calm-faced, wearing a plain charcoal hoodie, dark jeans, and worn leather sneakers. Nothing about him announced money. Nothing asked for attention. That was how he preferred it. "I think there's been a mistake," he said. "My boarding pass says as 1A. Linda gave a dry laugh. A man in row 2 lowered his newspaper. A woman across the aisle paused with her seatbelt halfway fastened. Near the front galley, glasses clicked softly on a tray as the flight attendants finished pre-departure service. Linda leaned closer. "People like you always say that." The cabin changed, not loudly, not all at once. But the air tightened. Conversations died. Someone's phone stopped playing a video. A child in the back coughed, and even that small sound seemed too loud. Caleb's eyes stayed on Linda. He had heard worse in boardrooms where men smiled while doubting him. He had heard softer versions in hotels, restaurants, private clubs, and airport lounges. The language changed. The message did not. "You do not belong here." He took a slow breath. "Mom," he said, "please let a crew member check both boarding passes." Linda's face hardened. The calm in his voice offended her more than anger would have. She reached past him, grabbed the paper boarding pass from the armrest, and glanced at it for less than a second. Then she tossed it back toward his lap. "This is ridiculous. Please don't touch my things," the Caleb said. That was when she shoved his coffee. The cup tipped. Dark liquid splashed across the folded Wall Street Journal on his lap and ran down onto his jeans. Heat soaked through the fabric. Caleb flinched, but he did not stand. He did not curse. He only pressed one hand against the armrest and looked down at the spreading stain. A small gasp rose from the woman across the aisle. Linda stepped back as if he had caused the spill himself. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she said. "Now he's making a scene." Caleb looked up slowly. Several phones were out now, not all raised high, some hidden near jackets, some angled from laps. Americans knew when something was wrong, but many had learned to watch before they acted. Linda turned toward the galley. "Can somebody handle this?" she called. "There's a man sitting in first class who clearly isn't supposed to be here." The word clearly hung there. Caleb felt the old weight settle in his chest. Not fear, not shame. Something heavier. The knowledge that dignity could be questioned in public by a stranger, and that people in uniforms might still ask him to prove he deserved what he had already paid for. From the front of the cabin, Emily Parker turned at the sound. She was 34, neat blonde ponytail, navy uniform, pressed sharp service smile already forming. But when her eyes moved from Linda's expensive jacket to Caleb's hoodie, that smile shifted. Just a fraction. Enough. Caleb saw it. Linda saw it too. And Linda relaxed as if help had arrived. Emily walked down the narrow aisle, her shoes soft against the carpet, her tablet tucked against her side. "Is everything okay here?" she asked. Linda placed a hand on her chest. "Thank goodness. This man is in my seat." Caleb lifted the boarding pass. "This is my assigned seat," he said. 1A Emily looked at the paper, not closely. Her eyes moved instead to his sneakers, his coffee-stained jeans, his dark face, then back to Linda. And in that tiny silence, Caleb understood how the next few minutes would go. Emily Parker held the tablet against her ribs and gave Caleb the kind of smile people use when they have already decided the truth. "Sir," she said, "I think there may be some confusion." Caleb kept the boarding pass raised between two fingers. A drop of coffee slid from the edge of the paper and fell onto his knee. "There is no confusion," he said. "My seat is 1A. Linda let out a sharp breath and sank halfway into the seat behind him, as if the argument had already been settled in her favor. "He has been difficult since I got here," she said. "I tried to explain that this is my seat. He refused to move." Caleb turned his eyes toward her, but he did not answer. He knew that some people did not lie because they were confused. They lied because they trusted the room to believe them. Emily glanced toward the front of the cabin. The boarding door was still open, but the line of passengers had slowed. A man in a baseball cap stood in the aisle holding a duffel bag, trying not to stare. Behind him, an elderly couple waited with the patient discomfort of people who had seen enough life to know when something ugly was unfolding. "Mom," Emily said to Linda, softening her voice. "Are you all right?" Linda's face changed instantly. Her shoulders lowered. Her eyes widened just enough. "I'm shaken," she said. "I fly this route all the time. I have never been treated this way." Caleb felt the burn of the coffee on his skin, but he felt something deeper than pain. He felt the careful machinery of assumption starting up around him. Emily finally took the boarding pass. She looked at it for less than 2 seconds. Then she frowned. "Sir, this pass appears to say 1A, she said. "It does," Caleb replied, "but we may need to verify it in the system. Please do." That should have ended the moment. A scan, a name check, a simple correction. But Emily did not move toward the galley computer. She stayed in the aisle, blocking the space between Caleb and the seat. Linda saw the hesitation and leaned into it. "Anyone can print something," she said. "You know how people are now. Scammers is everywhere." A few passengers shifted. Someone whispered, "Wow." Another phone lifted higher. Caleb heard the soft tap of recording. He did not look toward it. He had spent years teaching executives that dignity was not a performance. It had to survive even when the world tried to strip it away. Emily lowered her voice. "Sir, economy boarding is still open. If your seat was entered incorrectly, we can help you once everyone is settled." Caleb looked at her for a long moment. "Are you asking me to leave a seat you have not verified?" Emily's cheeks colored. "I'm asking you to cooperate." "With what?" "With the boarding process." "The boarding process requires you to check the record," Caleb said. "Not guess." The sentence landed cleanly. Emily's eyes tightened. In row 2, a white-haired man in a navy blazer cleared his throat. "Young lady, maybe just check the ticket." Emily turned toward him with a professional smile that carried a warning. "Sir, we have it under control." "No," he said quietly. "I don't believe you do." That small act of courage shifted the cabin. Not enough to rescue Caleb, but enough to remind everyone watching that silence was also a choice. Linda straightened, offended by the interruption. "I paid for first-class comfort," she said. "Not a public debate." Caleb finally stood, slowly, not aggressively, not suddenly. He stood because the coffee had soaked through his jeans, and because Emily's body was still between him and the seat he owned. He was taller than Linda expected. Taller than Emily expected, too. His shoulders filled the narrow aisle, but his hands remained open at his sides. "I will step into the aisle so this can be handled properly," he said. "But I am not giving up my seat." Emily took a half step back. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. At the front galley, another attendant looked over. Mark Reynolds, the cabin manager, had noticed the delay. He was 42, broad-faced, clean-shaven, with a clipped way of moving that made every gesture look like policy. He started down the aisle. Linda's mouth curled into a small, satisfied smile. Caleb saw it. Emily saw Mark coming and exhaled, relieved. But Caleb only folded his damp boarding pass once, carefully, as if preserving evidence. His phone buzzed in his hoodie pocket. He did not check it yet. He already knew who was calling. Mark Reynolds walked toward Caleb with the steady confidence of a man who believed a uniform could settle any truth. The aisle narrowed around him. Passengers pulled their knees in. A silver bracelet clicked against a tray table. Somewhere near the back, a baby began to fuss, then quieted as if even the child sensed the tension. Emily met Mark halfway and spoke in a low voice. "Passenger dispute in 1A, she said. "The gentleman claims the seat is his. Miss Carver says it belongs to her." Mark did not ask for the boarding pass first. He looked at Linda. Then he looked at Caleb. That order mattered. Linda sat upright now, one hand pressed delicately against her collarbone. She had returned to the seat, as if returning to property. Her purse rested on the console. Her legs were crossed. The coffee stain on Caleb's jeans made him look, to careless eyes, like the one who had caused disorder. Mark's face settled into a practiced expression. "Sir," he said, "I need you to lower your voice and cooperate with the crew." Caleb stared at him. "My voice has not been raised." Mark blinked. He had expected pushback. He had not expected precision. Emily shifted beside him. "He's refusing to resolve the seating issue." "I asked her to check the records," Caleb said. Mark extended his hand. "Boarding pass." Caleb handed it over. This time, Mark looked at the paper longer than Emily had. His eyes paused on the seat number. 1A, then on the name, Caleb Monroe. For one brief second, uncertainty passed through his face. It disappeared fast. "Do you have identification?" Caleb reached into his pocket. Of course. A phone camera in row 2 followed the movement. Mark saw it and stiffened. "Folks, please stop recording," he said, turning to the cabin. "This is a private matter." A teenage girl near the window did not lower her phone. She was small, maybe 17, with brown curls tucked under a college sweatshirt. Her name was Olivia Grant, and her hands were shaking. She had never planned to become involved in anything. She had only wanted to fly home to Nashville after visiting her grandmother. But she knew what wrong looked like. "This is not private," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Her screen showed a live stream. The viewer count had started small, then it doubled, then doubled again. Caleb handed Mark his driver's license. Mark compared the name to the boarding pass. His thumb tapped the edge of the paper. The documents matched. The seat matched. The name matched. Still, his eyes moved back to Linda. "Miss Carver," he said, "may I see your boarding pass?" Linda's confidence flickered, only for a moment. Then she smiled. "It's on my phone," she said. "But I fly this route constantly. Everyone knows I prefer this seat." "That was not the question," said the white-haired man in row 2. His wife touched his sleeve, worried. He did not stop. "The question was whether her pass says 1A. Mark gave him a tight look. "Sir, please let us handle this." The man's voice stayed calm. "Then handle it fairly." The cabin breathed differently now. More phones were up. People were no longer pretending not to watch. The quiet had changed from fear to witness. Linda pulled out her phone with a sharp motion and opened her airline app. Her fingers moved quickly. Too quickly. She angled the screen toward Mark, not Caleb. "There," she said, "first class." Mark leaned in, his jaw tightened. Emily looked over his shoulder. The seat on Linda's screen read 2C, not 1A. The truth sat there in clean digital text. For a heartbeat, nobody spoke. Caleb could hear the air system humming above them. He could hear Olivia breathing through her nose as she held her phone steady. He could hear Linda's nails tapping the edge of her phone case. Mark cleared his throat. "Miss Carver, it appears your assigned seat is 2C." Linda's eyes flashed. "That is wrong. The system must have changed it. I always sit in 1A. Caleb looked at the empty seat across the aisle. 2C is open. Linda turned on him. "Do not speak to me like we are equals." The words landed harder than the coffee. Emily's lips parted. Mark froze. Even Linda seemed to hear what she had said only after it left her mouth. Olivia's live stream comments exploded across the screen. Caleb did not move. His face changed, but only slightly. Something in his eyes cooled. Not cruelty, not rage, a door closing. Mark finally stepped closer to Linda. "Carver, I need you to move to your assigned seat." Linda looked at him as if he had betrayed her personally. "You are taking his side?" "I am following the seating record." "Now you check records?" Caleb asked quietly. Mark turned back to him. "Sir, I understand this has been frustrating, but we can move forward now." "No," Caleb said. The word was not loud. It did not need to be. Emily swallowed. Mark's posture changed. "Excuse me?" Caleb folded his license back into his wallet. Then he picked up the damp boarding pass and held it between them. "You allowed a passenger to put her hands on me. You dismissed my documentation. You treated a verified ticket like a suspicion because of what I looked like." Linda scoffed, but no one joined her. Caleb's phone buzzed again. This time he looked at it. The screen lit up with a message from someone named Patricia. Legal team standing by. Caleb turned the phone face down. Mark saw only the glow fade. But for the first time, doubt entered his eyes. Mark Reynolds stared at Caleb's phone for 1 second too long. He had seen passengers record complaints before. He had seen angry travelers threaten lawsuits, vouchers, news stations, and online reviews. Most of them cooled down once the aircraft door closed and the engine started humming. But this man was different. Caleb Monroe was not loud. He was not shaking. He was not trying to win the room with outrage. He was collecting the room. Every word, every pause, every choice. Mark felt it, and it irritated him. "Sir," Mark said, lowering his voice, "I am trying to resolve this without further disruption." Caleb looked at him, then start by acknowledging what happened. Emily shifted her weight. Her face was tight now, caught between embarrassment and pride. "Mr. Monroe," she said, using his name for the first time, "we understand there was confusion." Caleb's eyes moved to hers. No, there was no confusion. There was a boarding pass. There was a seat number. There was a woman sitting in the wrong seat. And there was a crew that chose not to verify the truth until other passengers forced the issue. The aisle went still. The words were calm, but they had weight. They did not accuse wildly. They described exactly what everyone had seen. Olivia Grant held her phone lower now, close to her chest. Her live stream was climbing. She could barely read the comments. Her thumb hovered over the screen, but she did not stop recording. Her grandmother had once told her that character was what you did. Standing up might cost you comfort. Olivia finally understood what that meant. Linda Carver rose from 1A in a sudden motion. "This is absurd," she snapped. "I made one mistake reading my pass. That does not give him the right to humiliate me." A soft sound moved through the cabin. Not laughter, not agreement, something closer to disbelief. The elderly man in row 2 looked at her over his glasses. "Mom," he said, "you put your cans on him." Linda's mouth opened, then shut. His spoke next, voice trembling but clear. "And you spilled his coffee." Linda turned toward Mark. "Are you going to let passengers attack me now?" "No one is attacking you," Caleb said. Linda pointed at him. "You are." With that tone. With this whole performance. Caleb looked down at his stained jeans, then back at her. "This was not my performance." That sentence quieted her. At the front of the aircraft, the gate agent's voice came through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we ask that all passengers take their assigned seats, so the crew can prepare for departure." Assigned seats. The phrase landed like a verdict. Mark took a breath and forced his shoulders square. He had a schedule to protect. An on-time departure. A crew watching him. A cabin full of phones. He wanted the fastest solution, not the most honest one. "Miss Carver," he said, "please move to 2C." Linda's face flushed. "I want his seat sanitized first." He spilled coffee everywhere. Emily looked down. The coffee was on Caleb, not the seat. Mark saw it too. Still, he said nothing. Caleb noticed. The silence cut deeper than the words. A younger flight attendant appeared near the galley. Ryan Brooks, 27, knew enough to still confuse confidence with authority. He looked from Mark to Caleb and stepped in quickly, eager to be useful. "Sir, you need to step aside so we can reseat everyone." Caleb turned slightly. "I am already standing aside." Ryan's jaw tightened. "You are blocking the aisle." Behind Caleb, passengers were lined up, yes. But the blockage had begun long before he stood. It had begun when a woman decided his presence was a problem, and the crew agreed with her without proof. Vanessa Hill arrived behind Ryan, arms folded. She was 39, experienced, tired, and visibly annoyed by the delay. "What is the issue now?" she asked. Linda answered before anyone else. "He is refusing to let this go." Vanessa looked Caleb up and down. Hoodie sneakers, coffee stain, dark skin. She made the same fast calculation the others had made, only colder. "Sir," she said, "at this point you are creating a hostile environment." Caleb's face did not change, but something inside him slowed. He thought of his father, a bus mechanic in Birmingham, who wore clean work shirts even when grease lived under his fingernails. He thought of the lesson the old man repeated whenever Caleb came home angry from school. Never let someone else's blindness decide who you are. Caleb breathed in, then out. "Hostile," he said quietly. That is an interesting word. Vanessa leaned closer. It is the word that applies when a passenger refuses crew direction. I refused discrimination, Caleb said. Not direction. Ryan scoffed under his breath. Emily heard it and looked away. Mark heard it too and did nothing. Olivia's live stream crossed another threshold. She whispered, barely audible, "They are making it worse." Mark turned toward her sharply. "Miss, stop recording." Olivia's hand trembled. Then the elderly woman in row 2 raised her phone too. "No," she ceased. "Let her record." One by one, more phones rose. Not in chaos, in witness. The cabin had chosen not to look away. Mark's control began to crack. He reached for the crew phone near the galley. "Gate security," he said into the handset, keeping his eyes on Caleb. "We may need assistance in first class." The word security moved through the cabin like a cold draft. Caleb heard it clearly. So did everyone else. The woman in row 2 pressed her lips together. Olivia's eyes widened, but her phone stayed steady. Linda Carver sat back in 2C at last, though she did not look defeated. She looked insulted, as if being corrected had wounded her more than humiliating Caleb had wounded him. Mark Reynolds hung up the crew phone and turned with a face made of stone. "Sir," he said, "airport security has been notified. I strongly suggest you cooperate before this gets worse." Caleb tilted his head slightly. Worse for whom? The question was quiet. That made it worse. Ryan Brooks stepped closer, crowding the aisle. He had the nervous energy of a young man who wanted his supervisor to see him as brave. His jaw was tight. His hands hovered near his belt, useless but performative. "Come on, man," Ryan said. "You got your seat back. Why are you still dragging this out?" Caleb looked at him. "Because getting the seat back does not erase what happened." Vanessa Hill exhaled sharply. "This is exactly what we mean. You are escalating." "No," Caleb said. "I am documenting." Emily Parker's face had gone pale. She kept glancing at the phones. She understood now that the story was no longer contained inside the aircraft. It was moving. It was being carried by strangers, by comments, by screens, by people who had seen too many moments like this and were tired of pretending they were isolated. Mark stepped between Caleb and the watching passengers. "Put your phone away," he said. Caleb's phone was still face down in his hand. "I am not recording," Caleb replied. "They are." Mark's eyes swept the cabin. "All of you need to stop filming. This is interfering with crew duties." The white-haired man in row 2 looked at him with sadness more than anger. "You had every chance to do the right thing before the cameras mattered." Mark's face hardened. Linda leaned into the aisle. "This is harassment. I want their names. All of them. Especially that girl recording." Olivia swallowed. For a moment she looked 17 again. Young, afraid, not ready for adults with money and authority to aim their anger at her. Then the elderly woman beside her husband lifted her own phone higher. "You can have my name too," she said. A murmur moved through the cabin, soft at first, then firmer. "Mine too," said the businessman across the aisle. "And mine," said a woman in a blue sweater near the window. It was not a riot. It was not chaos. It was something quieter, something more dangerous to people who depended on silence. It was witness becoming courage. From the jet bridge came the sound of heavy footsteps. 2 airport security officers entered the aircraft. The first was Daniel Price, 45, broad-shouldered, with tired eyes and a calm face. The second was Grace Kim, 38, smaller, alert, her dark hair pulled neatly back. They paused at the front, reading the room before anyone spoke. Good officers knew scenes had weather. This one felt electric. Officer Price looked at Mark. "Who called?" "I did," Mark said. "We have a passenger creating a disturbance in first class." Caleb did not move. Officer Kim's eyes passed over him, then the crew, then the raised phones, then Linda's rigid posture in 2C. "What kind of disturbance?" she asked. Mark hesitated. "Refusal to comply with crew instructions, disruptive behavior, passenger conflict." Officer Price turned to Caleb. "Sir, what is your name?" "Caleb Monroe." "Mr. Monroe, can you tell me what happened?" Before Caleb could answer, Linda spoke. "He took my seat, caused a scene, spilled coffee everywhere, and now he's trying to intimidate the crew." Olivia's voice cut through from behind her phone. "That's not true." Everyone turned. Her face flushed, but she kept going. She grabbed him first. She spilled the coffee. "His boarding pass said 1A. Hers said 2C. The crew didn't check until people started speaking up. Officer Kim looked at Olivia's phone. Are you recording? Yes, Mom, Olivia said. Her voice shook. From the beginning. Officer Kim nodded once. Not approving, not condemning, just noting. Officer Price faced Mark again. Did you verify both boarding passes? Mark's mouth tightened. Eventually, yes. Eventually, Officer Price repeated. That one word did damage. Emily looked down. Ryan stopped shifting. Vanessa crossed her arms tighter. Officer Kim stepped toward Caleb. May I see your boarding pass and ID, sir? Caleb handed them over without hesitation. She studied the documents, carefully, properly, like truth deserved time. The cabin waited. The hum of the aircraft filled the silence. A light above the galley blinked. Officer Kim looked up. This boarding pass shows first class. Seat 1A, she said. Caleb nodded. Yes. She turned to Linda. Mom, may I see yours? Linda's mouth opened. No words came. For the first time since the incident began, she seemed smaller than the seat around her. She unlocked her phone with stiff fingers and handed it over. Officer Kim read the screen. Seat 2C, she said. Officer Price looked at Mark. His voice was calm but colder now. So why was security called on Mr. Monroe? Mark Reynolds did not answer right away. That pause told the cabin more than any confession could have. Officer Price stood in the aisle with Caleb's boarding pass in one hand and Linda's phone in the other. His face stayed professional, but his eyes had narrowed. He had spent years in airports. He knew the difference between a real security issue and a crew trying to turn embarrassment into authority. I asked you a question, Officer Price said. Why was security called on Mr. Monroe? Mark swallowed. Because he refused crew instruction. What instruction? To step aside, to stop disrupting boarding. Caleb looked at him. I stepped aside. Olivia's voice came from row 3, small but steady. He did. He moved into the aisle when they asked. Officer Kim glanced at her. You have that on video? Yes, Mom. Emily Parker pressed her fingers against the edge of her tablet. The plastic creaked softly. She wanted to speak, but every possible sentence seemed to lead back to the same truth. She had not checked first. She had judged first. Linda Carver crossed her arms, trying to recover the room. This is being blown out of proportion, she said. I was confused. He was standing there making everyone uncomfortable. The elderly woman in row 2 turned toward her. No, dear, she said softly. You were comfortable until people stopped believing you. Linda's face tightened as if slapped. Officer Kim handed Linda's phone back. Mom, please remain in seat 2C for now. I would like to file a complaint, Linda said. You may do that at the gate, Officer Kim replied. Right now, we are trying to understand why a passenger with a valid first-class ticket was threatened with removal. The word threatened made Ryan Brooks shift his feet. Vanessa Hill looked toward the cockpit door, as if hoping the captain might appear and take the weight off her shoulders. But no one came. The crew had wanted authority. Now they had accountability. Caleb remained still, his damp jeans cooling against his skin. The sting of the coffee had faded, leaving a sticky discomfort that felt almost symbolic. Humiliation always left residue. Even after the truth came out, something remained. He looked at Emily. Miss Parker, he said, when I first showed you my boarding pass, why did you not verify it? Emily's mouth opened. Her eyes flicked to Mark, then to the cameras, then back to Caleb. I thought there had been a misunderstanding. Based on what? She had no answer that would not expose her. Caleb did not press immediately. He let the silence do what silence does when truth is trapped inside it. Finally, Emily whispered, based on the situation. Caleb nodded once, slowly. The situation, he repeated. A white woman sitting in first class, and a black man standing beside her with a valid ticket. The cabin went so quiet that even the overhead air sounded loud. Emily's eyes filled, but Caleb did not mistake tears for accountability. He had seen that before too. Some tears were regret, some were fear of consequences. Healing required knowing the difference. Mark stepped in. Mr. Monroe, I think we should continue this conversation privately. Caleb turned to him. Why? To avoid further embarrassment. For whom? Mark's face colored. For everyone, he said. Caleb looked around the cabin. At Olivia, still recording with trembling hands. At the elderly couple who had risked their comfort to speak. At the businessman who had lowered his phone, but not his eyes. At passengers who looked ashamed, not because they had acted badly, but because they had almost stayed silent too long. No, Caleb said. The harm was public. The correction should not be hidden. Officer Price studied him for a moment. There was respect in his gazes now, not because Caleb was powerful. He did not know that yet, but because Caleb was controlled in a moment where many people would have broken. Mr. Monroe, Officer Price said, "What would you like to do?" Caleb reached into his hoodie pocket and took out his phone. The screen lit up again. This time the name was visible. Patricia Hale, General Counsel. Mark saw it. His eyes changed. Not full recognition. Not yet. But worry entered the room with force. Caleb answered the call and held the phone close to his ear. "Yes, Patricia," he said quietly. "I am still on the aircraft." A woman's voice came through faintly, crisp and urgent. "Caleb, do we need to activate the executive response team?" Executive. The word slipped into the cabin like a match near gasoline. Emily looked up. Ryan frowned. Vanessa's arms slowly lowered. Mark stared at Caleb as if seeing him for the first time. Caleb's voice remained even. "Not yet," he said. "But begin preserving all flight records, crew assignments, passenger complaints, and gate security communications for Flight 447. Officer Kim's eyes sharpened. Linda's lips parted. Caleb looked directly at Mark. "And Patricia," he added, "notify the board that our unannounced customer dignity assessment has produced a serious failure." The cabin heard every word, even the ones Caleb did not raise. Customer dignity assessment. Serious failure. Mark Reynolds looked as if the floor had shifted beneath him. His hand moved toward his tablet, then stopped. Emily Parker stared at Caleb's phone, as though it had become something dangerous. Ryan Brooks looked from face to face, trying to understand why the adults around him had gone pale. Only Linda Carver still tried to hold on. "What is this?" she demanded. "Some kind of setup?" Caleb ended the call. For the first time since the coffee spilled, he allowed himself one slow look around the cabin. His gaze passed over the crew, the officers, the passengers, the phones, the seat that had become more than a seat. It had become a mirror. "No," he said. "It was an assessment." Mark's voice came out thin. "Assessment for who?" Caleb reached into his hoodie's pocket and opened an internal company app. His thumb moved with calm precision. The screen shifted past ordinary passenger tools into a secure executive portal. Officer Kim saw the header first. Her posture changed. Officer Price leaned slightly closer. Emily saw their reaction before she saw the screen. That was when fear truly entered her face. Caleb turned the phone so Mark could read it. The display was simple. No theatrics, no dramatic logo, just a secure corporate identity page. Caleb Monroe, Chief Executive Officer. Monroe Air Group, majority shareholder. Executive authority active. Mark's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Ryan whispered, "No way." Vanessa's arms dropped fully to her sides. Emily stepped back as if the aisle had become too narrow for her to breathe. Linda stared at the screen, then at Caleb's stained jeans, then back at the screen. The whole story she had built in her mind began to collapse, piece by piece, without asking her permission. Caleb put the phone away. "I am the Chief Executive Officer of this airline," he said, "and I have been conducting unannounced reviews of how our customers are treated when nobody thinks leadership is watching." The silence after that was physical. A phone camera clicked softly. Somewhere in coach, a passenger whispered, "Oh my God." Officer Price cleared his throat. "Mr. Monroe, we were not aware." "I know," Caleb said. That was the point. His voice was not cruel. That made it harder to bear. He turned to Emily first. "You saw a document and chose doubt. Not because of the document, but because of the person holding it." Emily's eyes shone. "Mr. Monroe, I am sorry." Caleb nodded slightly. "I believe you are sorry now." The words were quiet. Devastating. He turned to Mark. "You called security after you knew my boarding pass was valid, and after you knew Miss Carver was assigned to another seat." Mark swallowed hard. "I was trying to prevent further disruption." "No," Caleb said. "You were trying to prevent further embarrassment." "There is a difference." Officer Kim looked down at her notes. Her pen moved carefully. She understood that the record mattered, not just for legal reasons. For moral ones, too. Facts protected people when memory became convenient. Linda suddenly stood from 2C. "I did not know who you were," she said. Caleb looked at her. That sentence seemed to make the cabin colder. "And that is the problem," he said. Linda blinked. "Excuse me? You believe my identity matters because of my title. It does not. If I were a teacher, a retiree, a mechanic, or a man flying to see his grandchild, I would still deserve to sit in the seat I paid for without being touched, mocked, or treated like a fraud." His voice slowed. That was when the story became bigger than him. The measure of decency is not how we treat powerful people when we recognize them. It is how we treat strangers when we think they have no power at all. No one moved. Olivia's eyes filled with tears behind her phone. The elderly man in row 2 lowered his head. The businessman across the aisle stopped recording and simply listened. Linda's confidence finally broke. "I made a mistake," she whispered. Caleb's face remained steady. "You made several choices." Emily covered her mouth with one hand. Ryan looked at the floor. Vanessa's expression had changed from annoyance to shame, slow and heavy. Mark tried again. "Sir, if we can speak off the aircraft, I am sure we can resolve this appropriately." Caleb looked toward the open aircraft door, then back at the cabin. "No. This began in public. It will be addressed with witnesses present." He turned to Officer Price and Officer Kim. "I would like both of you to remain until this incident is documented." Officer Price nodded. "Yes, sir." Caleb looked at the crew. "Notify the captain that departure is paused. Also request a replacement crew." Emily's breath caught, Mark's face drained. Caleb's voice stayed even. "Effective immediately. None of you will operate this flight." Emily Parker looked as if the words had taken the air from her lungs. "None of you will operate this flight." For a crew member, that sentence was not just discipline. It was a public failure, a report, a review, a mark that could follow a career for years. Ryan Brooks stared at the carpet as if he could disappear into it. Vanessa Hill closed her eyes once, then opened them with the heavy realization that experience had not made her wiser that day. It had made her certain too soon. Mark Reynolds tried to speak, but his voice broke. "Mr. Monroe, please. I understand how this looks." Caleb turned to him. "It does not look like anything. It is what happened." The captain appeared at the cockpit door then. Captain Alan Pierce was in his late 50s, silver-haired, with the controlled posture of a man who spent his life responsible for lives in the air. He had been briefed in fragments, passenger issue, security delay. Now he saw the cabin. Phones raised, officers present. His own cabin crew pale and shaken. Then he saw Caleb. Recognition moved across his face slowly, then all at once. "Mr. Monroe," he said. That was enough. Passengers who still had doubts lost them. The captain knew him, not as a passenger, as the man whose signature sat on company policy, aircraft leases, safety budgets, labor agreements, and executive decisions. Caleb nodded. "Captain Pierce." The captain's eyes flicked to Mark. "What happened here?" Officer Price answered before Mark could shape the story. A seated first-class passenger was challenged despite valid documentation. Another passenger was in the wrong seat. The crew called security on the ticketed passenger after the ticket had already been verified. Captain Pierce's jaw tightened. He was old enough to remember when airlines could hide behind procedure. He was also honest enough to know procedure had often been used as a shield for poor judgment. He looked at Caleb. "Sir, I apologize." Caleb's expression did not soften. "Not yet. Thank you, Captain. But an apology without action is only sound." The captain nodded once. Understood. Caleb lifted his phone again and called Patricia Hale back. He placed it on speaker this time, not for drama, but for clarity. The cabin heard a woman's voice answer with professional urgency. "Patricia Hale. Patricia, Captain Pierce is present. Officers Price and Kim are present. I want this documented as an executive-level customer dignity failure involving racial and class-based assumptions, improper escalation, and retaliation through security contact." Mark flinched at the word retaliation. Patricia's voice sharpened. "Understood. Are you requesting immediate personnel hold?" "Yes." "Remove Mark Reynolds, Emily Parker, Ryan Brooks, and Vanessa Hill from active duty pending investigation. Paid administrative leave until facts are reviewed. No public statements from them. No deletion of device records. No alteration of crew logs. Emily covered her face. Her shoulders shook once. Caleb saw it. He let the silence breathe for a moment. Then he added, Patricia, make sure they receive union notification and access to representation. This is an investigation, not a spectacle. Emily lowered her hands slowly. That mattered. Even in anger, Caleb refused to become careless with power. Accountability, he believed, had to be clean. Otherwise, it became revenge wearing a better suit. Patricia replied, understood. Replacement crew is being located. Corporate HR is standing by. Good. Also notify customer care that every passenger on this aircraft will receive a written explanation, a travel credit, and access to a statement portal if they witness the incident. A soft murmur moved through the cabin. Not because of the credit, because someone in power had just treated witnesses like people, not inconveniences. Linda Carver sat frozen in 2C. Her eyes were red now, but not yet humble. She was still fighting the instinct to make herself the injured party. Caleb ended the call and turned toward the passengers. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice carrying without strain. I am sorry for the delay. I am also sorry you had to witness something that too many people in this country recognize immediately. No one interrupted. No customer should have to prove their humanity before their ticket is believed. No employee should be trained to protect comfort at the expense of dignity. And no company should wait for a video to go viral before doing the right thing. Olivia's hand trembled again. This time, not from fear. From the weight of hearing an adult say plainly what everyone else had been circling around. The elderly man in row 2 nodded slowly. Caleb turned back to the crew. You will step off this aircraft with Officer Price and Officer Kim. You will not discuss this incident with passengers. You will write individual statements before leaving the airport. Ryan finally looked up. Am I fired? His voice sounded younger than before. Caleb studied him. Not today, Ryan swallowed. But you will have to answer for what you did. And more importantly, you will have to understand why you did it. That landed harder than punishment. Vanessa looked away ashamed. Emily whispered, Mr. Monroe, I really am sorry. Caleb nodded once. Then let that be the beginning of something better. Not the end of your discomfort. The crew stepped off the aircraft in a line that felt longer than the aisle itself. Mark Reynolds went first, shoulders stiff, face drained of the authority he had worn so easily minutes earlier. Emily followed with her eyes lowered. Ryan walked behind her, no longer eager, no longer performing. Vanessa came last, carrying herself with a quiet heaviness that looked almost like grief. Officer Price and Officer Kim walked with them to the jet bridge. No one clapped. That mattered. This was not entertainment now. It was consequence. Caleb watched them leave, then turned toward Linda Carver. She sat in 2C with her purse clutched against her body, her face pale beneath careful makeup. For most of her adult life, Linda had known how to survive discomfort. She smiled through awkward charity luncheons. She recovered from social missteps at board dinners. She knew how to apologize without surrendering too much. But this was different. This had witnesses. This had video. This had truth. Caleb stepped into the aisle near her row. He kept enough distance that no one could mistake his presence for intimidation. Miss Carver, he said. Linda looked up. For the first time, she did not interrupt. You put your hands on me, Caleb said. You took my boarding pass. You spilled coffee on me. You described me as someone who did not belong here. Linda swallowed. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her purse. I was upset, she said. Caleb waited. The cabin waited with him. Linda looked away. I thought there had been a mistake. Because of what? Her eyes moved back to him. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. The question left no place to hide. Linda's lips trembled. Because you were in my seat. It was never your seat. She flinched. The truth was no longer complicated. It was not a misunderstanding. It was not a system error. It was a woman seeing a black man in a premium space and deciding the space must be wrong. The elderly woman in row 2 lowered her phone. Her expression was stern, but not cruel. She had lived long enough to know that shame could either harden a person or open them. Caleb reached for his phone. Linda stiffened. I am not calling your employer, he said. Her face changed immediately. Fear had revealed where her mind had gone first. Caleb saw it. You were worried about your reputation before you were worried about the harm. Linda's eyes filled. That sentence found its mark. I am sorry, she whispered. Caleb studied her for a long moment. For what? Linda blinked. It was the kind of question people avoided because real apologies had to be specific. They had to name the wound. They had to stop hiding behind general regret. She breathed in unevenly. I am sorry I touched you, she said. I am sorry I took your pass. I am sorry I assumed you were in the wrong place because of how you looked. Caleb remained still. And? Linda's voice cracked. And because you are black. The cabin did not move, but something shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Truth. Caleb nodded once. That is where accountability begins. Linda wiped under one eye, careful not to smear her makeup. What happens now? That depends on what you choose next. She looked frightened again. Are you going to sue me? I have that right, Caleb said. I also have the right to file a formal complaint with airport police for unwanted physical contact. I have the right to notify your employer if your conduct violates their ethics standards. I have the right to let the video speak for itself. Linda closed her eyes. Every option seemed to take something from her. Her status, her comfort, her story about herself. Then Caleb's voice softened, not with weakness, but with intention. But I am more interested in repair than spectacle. Linda opened her eyes. You will provide a written statement before leaving this airport. You will make a public apology to the passengers who witnessed this, and to me. Not a polished statement, not legal language, your own words. Linda nodded quickly. You will also complete a restorative education program through a civil rights organization of your choice, at your expense. Not because it will erase this, but because ignorance that harms people must be interrupted. Her mouth trembled. Yes, I will. Caleb held her gaze. And if you turn this into a story about being attacked, canceled, or misunderstood, then the documentation will answer you. Linda nodded again, slower this time. She understood. Across the aisle, Olivia lowered her phone just enough to breathe. She had expected punishment. She had not expected this. It felt heavier, cleaner, harder to dismiss. Captain Pierce returned to the cabin with a replacement lead attendant, a black woman in her 50s named Denise Howard. Her posture was calm, her voice warm but firm. Mr. Monroe, she said, we are ready to reset the cabin when you are. Caleb looked down at his coffee-stained jeans, then at seat 1A. The seat was empty now, waiting. He turned to the passengers. Thank you for not looking away, he said. No one cheered, but several people nodded. And sometimes that was how healing began. Caleb Monroe finally sat down in seat 1A, but he did not sink into it like a victor. He sat slowly, with the careful weight of a man who knew the seat was never the real prize. The leather was still warm from the woman who had claimed it. The armrest still smelled faintly of coffee. His jeans were stained. His boarding pass was bent and damp. But his back was straight. His dignity had not moved. Denise Howard stood at the front of the cabin with a new crew behind her. Her voice came through the intercom, steady and human. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We are resetting the cabin now. We will depart as soon as it is safe and appropriate to do so. On behalf of Monroe Air, I apologize for what you witnessed today. No polished corporate language, no hiding, no softening the truth, just an apology. Caleb opened his laptop. His fingers hovered above the keys for a moment. Then he began to type. Not a press release, not a defensive statement. A message to every employee in the company. Subject, effective immediately. Customer dignity protocol. The words appeared one by one. Every passenger is to be treated as a person before they are treated as a problem. Documentation must be verified before assumptions are made. Security is never to be used as a tool for embarrassment, retaliation, or bias. Any complaint involving discrimination will be reviewed within 24 hours by an independent response team. He paused, then added one more line. Respect is not a premium service. It is the standard. Across the aisle, Olivia Grant watched him through tired eyes. Her live stream had ended, but the video was already moving through the country. She did not fully understand what she had captured yet. She only knew her hands had stopped shaking. Caleb looked over at her. "You did a brave thing," he said. Olivia swallowed. "I was scared. That does not make it less brave." The elderly man in row 2 leaned back, his wife holding his hand. Linda Carver sat in silence, staring at the written statement she had begun on her phone. Her apology was not elegant. It was not polished, but it was specific. She named what she had done. She named why it was wrong. For the first time that afternoon, she was not trying to sound innocent. She was trying to tell the truth. That was a beginning. Outside the aircraft window, the jet bridge lights glowed against the late afternoon sky. Inside, the cabin felt different. Not cheerful, not healed completely, but awake. Captain Pierce came over the intercom. "Mr. Monroe, passengers, this is Captain Pierce. We are cleared for departure. Before we push back, I want to say this plainly. What happened before this flight did not meet the standards of this airline or basic human decency. We will do better. We must." No one applauded. The silence that followed was better than applause. It was respect. As the plane finally pushed back from the gate, Caleb looked out at the runway. He thought of his father's hands, rough from work, gentle when teaching him how to hold his head high. He thought of every person who had ever been told, directly or quietly, that they did not belong in a room they had earned the right to enter. Today had not fixed the world, but it had told the truth in front of witnesses. And sometimes truth, spoken clearly, is where repair begins. By the time the aircraft lifted into the sky, Caleb's company-wide message had reached thousands of employees. By evening, Monroe Air announced an independent review, new bias training, and a passenger advocate program at every major hub. Not because the internet demanded it, because dignity demanded it first. Caleb did not smile when the city dropped away beneath the clouds. He simply closed his laptop, folded his hands, and breathed. He had taken back his seat. But more than that, he had reminded a cabin full of strangers that power means nothing if it is not used to protect people with less of it. And if this story made you think of a moment when someone was judged before they were heard, do not let that memory stay silent. Share it. Talk about it. Stand beside someone when the room turns against them. Because change does not always begin with a speech. Sometimes it begins with one person refusing to look away.